Hello and welcome to My View from the Piano Bench. We do this every Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. here on my Joel Holt's Notes YouTube channel, along with Piano for My Friends every Thursday at 7 p.m. Thank you very much to those of you who support and encourage me via the links available on the support page of my website. You'll see a link to that in the description. I really do appreciate it. If you do go there are a number of tip jar options. Any drop in a tip jar is appreciated, and the Patreon is set up to be an ongoing tip jar, unique take on it, low maintenance, and you'll receive some exclusive content and my continuing gratitude. But let's proceed. Topic tonight is going to be a continuation of last week. I wasn't sure when I did it last week when or how or whatever was going to happen next. These just come as they inspire me. But last week was intimate space venues. I didn't call it part one just because I didn't want to commit to there being a part two. But guess what? Here it is. Intimate space venues, part two. And as I thought about how to present this, it seemed an appropriate time to talk a little bit about my perception or my connection or my perceived connection or the influence of Dave McKenna on me. And I'm going to assume that most of you who are watching this are aware of Dave McKenna. Have heard me talk about Dave McKenna, how I encountered his playing back in like high school years when I saw him on the Merv Griffin show for like 3 minutes playing Sweet Georgia Brown, and how that just opened the I'm glad he thought of that, which means I'm glad I can think of that, chapter in me. And sometimes you just need to have permission, and for better or worse, it's better really, of course. I am easily inspired by watching other musicians do different takes on things. And for some reason, I don't want to say I have a reluctancy to go like in kind of uncharted places. It just is more comfortable if like someone has already sort of beat the path a little bit, and then I go in there and then it's like, okay, and I can beat the path over here this way. It's just the awareness of possibilities is what that all is. And strange as it is, as much as Dave McKenna, and particularly the walking bass line, really became kind of foundational to what I do. It was more just like watching him and getting the idea than really kind of studying his playing. And I've never been like not necessarily in my credit, I'm just saying, I've never been like an exclusive disciple of anybody's playing, or not been one to say I'm going to, just spend time really getting inside this guy's playing so I can, do the things that he did and learn from them and all that. I'm just like kind of floating through where I float through. But that hasn't necessarily served me well. And I'm more inclined now at this stage of my life to really like look at what other people are doing, but still, I guess not from a theoretical sense. And that's what contemporary jazz is. It's kind of grounded in academic theory, and you learn through the theory, as opposed to in the old school. And you could even call a lot of what happened post-bop old school, and that you learn by doing, you learn by figuring it out yourself, whatever it is you're thinking about it, you learn by your own innovations. And just thinking about that in preparation for this, I'm an old school player, but it's more like old school in how I got here, and old school in what my like stylistic happy places are, but not old school in, that my playing sounds old. And I've kind of always but thought about how do I market that? How do I come up with a marketing kind of saying to describe it, classic jazz piano for today or something. But words are not my friend. But I keep using them. Go figure. But the point of bringing up Dave McKenna when it comes to intimate space venues is as I began to really start paying attention, to the extent that I pay attention to anything, I guess. That's an indictment, isn't it? Whew. But when I did focus in on Dave McKenna, which was, regrettably, from the time he passed away in 2008, and that's when all these videos started showing up on YouTube. I will admit I did not collect Dave McKenna recordings. I bought recordings, although I don't have a big LP collection, and most of the recordings I got were early on, especially in the whole Benny Goodman vein and everything. But now, of course, everything's accessible online. And when Dave McKenna passed away is when people really began posting videos. There wasn't much on YouTube of Dave McKenna until he passed away. And then everybody started doing tributes to him. And of course, I remember how impacted I was by watching him that one time on Merv Griffin, and I was paying attention to the things that were popping up and paying attention to the videos that were being posted of Dave McKenna, but also paying attention to the tributes that were posted about Dave McKenna. And what it really illustrated was, even if like jazz academics could talk about what Dave McKenna did better than he could talk about it himself, because for him it was like an intuitive thing, like it is with me, nobody played like him. I don't mean just like imitating. In fact, people will try to imitate him, but I'm talking about like basically kind of coming from the same angle of attack, and he was so unique. And I'm really hesitant to say this about myself, but, when I put my mind to it, or even when I don't, maybe especially when I don't, at times, because I'm not just doing a thing, I'm going different places, but there are zones I can get in where, I haven't heard other people kind of be in the Dave McKenna zone more than me. Not saying I'm as good as him or even in his category. I'm just saying that unique sort of like brain wiring thing. And as I began to own that, then, oh look, I've talked so much and I was supposed to say something like early on. Okay, anyway, as I began to really own that, it started to turn my attention to venues, and in particular Dave McKenna's, which you can't just say intimate space venues, but it's a variation of the intimate space venue. It's a venue that creates your own intimate space, which would be like a lounge or a loosely worded piano bar or a hotel gig, and he had residencies doing that, solo piano, and people would come and listen intently, and they were, not necessarily you could hear a pin drop because, people were eating, people were doing what they did, but people were in a listening space. And a really good example of that is the Copley Plaza event where Tony Bennett joined Dave McKenna, and you can find that on YouTube, and other videos that kind of show people listening intently, along with other videos that showed where people weren't. But the point is that Dave McKenna, who would demean himself and say, I'm just a saloon player, don't call me a great jazz guy, there's a certain, maybe not saloon aspect to it, but it's a certain thing where, if that's kind of what you do, that's kind of that's an important venue. It's an important sort of just like workhorse place. And, it's not just about, not that I would always think this, but, not just about being on some stage, or particularly an important stage. Because really, like any stage or any opportunity is an opportunity to connect with people. A very long-winded way of saying that the more that I pondered the whole Dave McKenna situation, the more I realized I needed to do something that I had never done for myself, and that's go out and actually try to get myself a solo restaurant gig. You know, the closest I came to that, I guess, was when I was doing the showboat stuff back in the '90s. You know, uh, but I mean, I did do occasional things. I would play, restaurants or lounges to do things solo piano, but never like this is my gig and this is kind of an important center of gravity. And I was pushed in that direction by the connection with Dave McKenna, internally pushed. Nice work if you can get it. And it's never a good idea to like make up your mind that you're going to sound like a particular thing. And midway through that, I started having sort of multiple personality disorder about that. Because I just did a really fun gig. Well, anyway, let's stay on task. Welcome to my world. My view from the bench is a multifaceted look through a kaleidoscope view where all those little colors are little scenes that are playing out. And it's like shiny, shiny, which am I following? Anyway, what am I doing? So, with the idea that this will be a much cleaner statement of what I was trying to say, to follow the example of Dave McKenna was probably a good blueprint or a good idea if I was perceiving that I was kind of in that place. Now, the problem is that I live in a very rural area, in the area of Chestertown, Maryland. And the town itself is like 5,000 people and change. And it's the biggest town for 30 miles in any direction. It's the county seat. And surprisingly, it's also very much an arts and culture center, at least the town itself. And by extension, to some extent, the greater area in the county. But it's very rural. It's the least populated county in the state of Maryland. And it's by design. There's pretty much no population growth in this area. It's very rural and agricultural, lots of farms and such. But still a vital arts community. But it's like, okay, a regular, like ongoing piano restaurant gig, you can't support that in Chestertown. The other thing about this town, unlike other like small cities on the Eastern Shore, the highway does not run through it or right near it. The main highway, which in our case is Route 301, at its closest point comes 12 miles. Well, I can't pronounce anything. 12 miles to Chestertown. And so it's not even on the beaten path. It's the 2-lane road path that you got to even take to come to town. So the town is not so much a pass-through town. It's a destination town. So that kind of limits, traffic and such as well, right? So it's like, okay, I'm going to go down to one of the beaten path towns, one of the towns on the highway, which I did. I targeted a place. I looked online. I saw what places were what, and here's a place that's not doing something, and here's a place that could really work. And at this stage in the later part of my life, I'm not one to do that so much anymore. Just like, I should be doing this, and I should be playing here, and I'm going to contact this person. I'm going to make cold calls and stuff. I did a lot of that decades ago, but not so much now. I try to go, where it all takes me. But I did a thing where I contacted. I went down, I talked, I played, I made the pitch. It was a nice piano there. The owner appreciated the older music and got myself a weekly gig, and did that for a while. And that was my first sort of move into not doing that at all, but I mean, but doing that with the purpose of that's actually kind of important, if that makes sense. And so it was cool, and I wasn't actually in a restaurant proper. I was off in a private little, not private room, but a separate room where people could come in, but we piped the sound into the dining room, and it was kind of what you would expect, and a bit of a throwbacky kind of thing. That would be me, right? Throwback. But it fit the thing, and it got me kind of on that path of seeing that's important for the kind of thing I do. yeah, nice upscale place, cool, lasted for a while, and then things kind of evolved, in a different direction. And it was a good sort of like place for me to start to feel that that was a thing. And then I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to need to like do the thing where I do the commute to the bigger cities, and that doesn't excite me. And the older I get and the longer I live in this beautiful rural area that has its own arts emphasis, and I'm just have such a home here, uh, being supported and just loving the whole thing. It doesn't excite me. Uh, but I'm thinking, okay, what comes next? And then as that was happening, and I'm like looking around, just looking around, thinking, a friend of mine, a local pianist, Philip Dutton, and if you watch the predecessor to this stream or this video, when it was inside the process, there's an interview of Philip, and it's on YouTube. On Facebook. I believe I also posted it on YouTube. And there's not too many things where Philip and I are together. There's a few videos. So if you put my name and then Philip with one L, Philip Dutton. And if you're on Facebook, you'll find it on my videos on my musician page, but I don't remember if I posted it to YouTube. My apologies if I didn't. But anyway, Philip was able to arrange with a local restaurant that fortunately is not there anymore. But at the time, it was a thing, and it's hard not to say the name of the place because people talk about it. It's a JR's Pub, and then Philip started a piano bar gig, and his concept was that it would be every Sunday night, 4 different piano players, and each one would play once a month. And the fifth one, if there were 5, or somebody would play twice or something. And Philip had in mind that I would be one of the players. And it would be 2 guys who were local, Philip and me, and then 2 Wilmington area guys, which is like a smaller, but smaller compared to like Philly or Baltimore, but city, an actual city compared to Chestertown, an hour or so north of here. And I turned them down. And it's like, no, nope. And didn't do it for several months. And Philip was just kind of there being persistent. And the reason is that I didn't see that as an extension of what I did at this other restaurant. You say piano bar, and that's, And I learned that that's not me. I would have kind of known that that was no sentence. I would have known that anyway. But one of the things that I did when I moved out in this area is I'm looking for, and this is now like 10 years or so, or maybe even more, before what I just described a few minutes ago. And I just searched out places to do solo piano thing before I had the sense of like where I would really fit. And there was this yacht club down in one of the towns further south, and they had a piano bar that they did on a certain night of the week, and it was open. That's Friday nights or something. I'm like, let me try this, and I did it a few weeks, and it's like, and I mean the actual piano bar where people really more than anything want to sing along, and I mean that's okay, but it's like it's the party thing. It's not about the music, and I'm not that kind of guy. No disrespect, but I'm not Billy Joel in that regard, And it, did it for a couple of months. No, that wasn't it. So that was just like piano bar. No thanks, Philip. And yeah, I'm glad I looked over here. But there was another side to that I wasn't thinking about. Or maybe I was and just realizing the culture didn't support it anymore. The owner at this place that I did the regular gig at for a while would reminisce to me because he played piano and he uh, loved the old musicians, and he talked about regularly going to this piano bar that George Shearing would play, or going when Shearing would play it. And I'm like, man, those were the days when you could play a piano bar gig, and the tunes were like this. Right? Oh my goodness. Uh, but of course, that wasn't my experience with piano bar stuff. Decades after, you know, that would have been the thing, and George Shearing would have played a piano bar. Uh, but my friend, he impressed on me that uh, it would be not a cookie cutter scenario, but it would just take on the personality of the person doing it. And there wasn't a bar anyway. It was an upright piano in a separate room in the restaurant that was way off to the side. And it was just some secluded space. And there were couches and chairs and stuff. And it's like people will just come for what you do, not for the concept of what they think a piano bar is. And it's like, all right, let me try the thing. And he was right. And really what it was, and this is where I was getting to, it was a listening room. The last thing that I would have thought that something that you would call a piano bar would be. And I stopped calling it a piano bar for myself. I called it the piano room. And you'll find, like in my blog, if you go back to I guess 2014 to 16, or my Facebook page, go back that far, musician page, you'll find lots of posts from there. And when locals would post about it would always be piano bar. But everybody kind of understood what it was, and nobody expected it to be Billy Joel, except this is funny, the owner, who envisioned it being a Billy Joel Elton John thing when he set it up with Philip, and it became not that at all. But Philip has his Louisiana Cajun music, New Orleans Dr. John, Professor Longhair kind of thing that he does, and he had his crowd there for him, and that was a little more of a party atmosphere a bit with him. And then I had my thing, and the people who would support me, because I just get lots of love around here, and I certainly felt that there. And JR, the owner, saw that it was working and what it was, and he's like, okay, but he wasn't like personally invested in it, but it continued to happen and it became its own thing. And yeah, so as that was happening, and we were doing this, one night a week on Sunday nights, and it was really working for Philip and I. It wasn't working for the other musicians that were coming in, the other pianists, which was not necessarily about them so much. It was about this area and this town. And something that I had to keep in mind when I started programming at the Mainstay in 2016, to some extent anyway, that this area is really supportive of its own people. And anybody who's a performer here just gets embraced and really feels the love. And I've lived in this general area, going on 30 years. It's really been that long? Yeah, well, at least 25. And I can't overstate how much love and support I feel. So it made sense, and I just wasn't focused on that so much. I was focused on my bad experience. That people would come, they would support me, they would be there, they would be engaged. And the people who would be there to listen with people who sat close. It was a large room, and the seating was not close together. It's big poofy couches and comfy chairs and stuff. So you could comfortably just scatter around the room 20, 25, seats, and the people furthest on the other side could, hold conversations or do, even, tell jokes or whatever. And you kind of weren't aware of that in my side of the room. And then people partway through who would like get to the table and eat dinner, and then the people close by were just really paying attention, and it was super cool. It was a listening environment, and all those people were just there for that experience. But where I got a little distracted from was the people who were playing who weren't from town, because like the local people were coming for what they knew and who they wanted to support. So they weren't coming for the piano bar concept. They were coming for the musicians, just like Philip said. And the other players were not getting good crowds. And one night, one in particular got no one. And he sat at the bar, which was not in that room because nobody came in. And I'm like, okay, alarm bells are going off in my head. And I said, Philip, I know you don't want to do this, and I know this is not my gig, it's your gig, but we're going to lose this gig if nobody's coming or very few people are coming and the house is losing money half the time. The house was not losing money when Philip and I were playing. And I said, I think you need to cut the non-local guys. And, Philip was reluctant because he didn't want to play more than once a month, but he understood it, he got it, and eventually we got to the place where it was just Philip and I. And I was playing 3 nights of the month and Philip was playing 1. But yeah, we didn't want a situation where we'd have the piano bar night and nobody would come. So no lonesome nights in JR's or piano bar night. So then it was just Philip and I, or just Philip and me, or just for fun, one pass at a tune called Just You, Just Me, if I remember it. Apparently not. Yeah, there you go. I lied. I did 2 passes. Now, that tune is like an old, probably 30s tune, in the kind of ballpark of tunes that I'm really the most comfortable with. But not for this gig so much, not for the piano bar gig. Because another piece of the consideration is being relevant for the audience or finding a way. You know, because if there's going to be an audience, you need to be able to do things to connect. You don't have to do the same more pop culture things that everybody else is doing necessarily, you know, but you have to find some angle in. And the longer road than learning a bunch of more contemporary pop tunes quickly. And I'm always trying to pick up some of that, but that's a long road for me. And I realized the uniqueness of this area was going to provide me the opportunity to dig deep into the classic Broadway, and for a couple of reasons. One, all of my 3 kids were all involved in theater in their high school, and most of the kids who went to that high school were really involved in theater, and there was an awesome director down there, and those musicals in the high school were the bomb, you know. And so like people my age, you know, a lot of them had kids that went through the theater program and they knew all these shows. It's like, okay, that's all you want. You want familiarity, right? You want tunes that people know, right? And then another thing is we have a very active community theater. Okay, there's the Department of Redundancy Department in force here. The community theater community is what I was going to say. We could just say theater community. Down in the town 6 miles from here in Church Hill, we have a fabulous long-standing community theater. It runs 5 or 6 3-weekend shows a year, and they can sell out all of their shows, all 18 shows. And keep in mind how few people live here, but it draws from the area, and again, people support their people here. And also the big theater in Chestertown has a lot of theatrical productions. And so there's this theater community, and I'm like, okay, this is my in. This is my way to be relevant. And a lot of those tunes I knew, and it was easy to incorporate more of those tunes. And I could also think, okay, who might come or who's here tonight, and what show were they in and what role did they play, and well, let me play that tune for them. And that became kind of the main touch point, and off it went. And of course, classic Broadway tunes kind of, if not smack in the middle of the category of Great American Songbook, certainly, in that camp or an extension of that camp, right? familiar tunes. Or as I'm playing that, I was thinking, what else did I do? It's been a while since that gig happened. Yeah, and it's like, okay, I discovered Harry Connick Jr. had this version of this Mary Poppins tune. You know, a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down, right? Yep. Or television. Kermit the Frog here. Right? Or from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Yeah, not Broadway, but another category. And I wonder if I can put my hand on that particular folder. Let's see if it's right here. I knew it was green, and this is a green folder, and this is not it. Let's see if this next green folder is it. Just so you know, the meter's running here, so to speak. And that's not it. And that's not it, and that's not it. Okay, in one of these green folders, this one, here it is. And so what I had, I haven't looked at this in a long time. I stopped dealing with it after the gig ended, but I would have all this, all the shows, Broadway shows. You can't see the writing, and yes, it's small, but kind of purposely small so it's not visible from afar, and I could just refer to it. And so all these little blocks or shows. How many of these did I have? Look at how many I had. Some of these might be duplicates. And some contemporary shows that I didn't necessarily learn the tunes from, but you know, Cabaret and Paint Your Wagon and The King and I and Fiddler on the Roof and South Pacific and Sound of Music and Babes in Arms and Bye Bye Birdie and Jungle Book and My Fair Lady and Oliver and Peter Pan and Hello Dolly and Music Man, right? And so it's like, it helped me to like just see this and throughout my whole, it's funny to use the word career, you know, I'd rather say adventure, maybe, of playing. Lists and categories like this have served me well, and this is kind of what I would do in the music therapy world as well. Organize things by category or by date. And the music therapy perspective has really, well, you know, I had a music therapist perspective as a musician, which is how I stumbled into music therapy, and then, you know, sharpening that focus has just helped me as a musician. So there's that. So what happened was this thing was really kind of gangbustering on Sunday nights, and I'm like, you know, this is working, and it's doing what I didn't think could happen in little old Chestertown. And what I wasn't factoring in is the extent to which people would just keep coming, even every week. But not everybody came every week, but there was this, you know, pool of people. And from that pool of people, we would average a comfortably full room. So some weeks were a little smaller, and some weeks were like, man, we had to turn the room over and, you know, put some extra seats in. But even if we didn't turn the room over and we had a full room for just a 2-hour gig, you know, that still worked. And I just didn't take into account the uniqueness of the community. And also, along the way, and this will come up in part 3 whenever I do it of this, I kind of underestimated the impact of the connection that I have with people here. in the area. And it's kind of dumb to do that because I know how deep it is, and I know how much I'm blessed by it. But I just had sort of PTSD about, excuse me, the piano bar concept, and about just, I'm not a piano bar guy, and it wasn't. But that really took it to the intimate space venue listening room thing, and it's like, yeah, this is what works for me. And in a kind of small way, because Dave McKenna had, larger stages than me, for sure, of course. Uh, but it was that same kind of like experience and connection, and that's what I was going for when I first got the idea in my head. And uh, so last week I talked about the American Cruise Lines boats uh, as a unique intimate space venue, because typically you would think the same people were coming week after week, but it wasn't the case there. So my thing there was I had to win over a new crowd every week. Uh, and that was its own fun, right? But in this case, with the piano bar gig at JR's, uh, it was cultivating relationships, right? And what you expect a regular, recurring gig to be. So then what wound up happening was I asked Philip, I said, I think that this could work on a second night here. And I assumed you don't want to do any more than your one or maybe two nights a month. And if that's still what it is, how would you feel if I approached the house about having my own night in addition to this, like during the week? And that's a whole nother subject that I should probably talk about at some point, which is like the politics and the procedures and the decorum about, handling music business. And I've made a few mistakes along the way, just inadvertently, and almost got myself in trouble. But at a certain point along the way, you learn the rule book, right? But you also just want to be considerate, and that's the primary thing. And so it's a no-brainer. Talk to Philip, and he gave his blessing on it. So I talked to the management, and actually for a while had 2 nights in the week, but that quickly shrank down, and we had Wednesday nights as a regular night. So piano bar night was Sunday and Wednesday. Sunday, Philip and I alternated, or one of us were there, and Wednesday was just my night. So my goodness, now there were 2 nights a week in this little town of 5,000 people that we were running this successful thing. And in fact, as JR's was winding down, well, I won't go in the details, but it eventually ended. Somebody else is there now, and music stopped being presented there because there were several rooms there. This was like its own little subculture private thing. There was a bigger room in the back, and there'd be bands on the weekends and stuff, and all of that stopped. The only thing that kept going until the place closed was the piano bar, the piano room, and it was just a viable thing that whole time, which was really fantastic. And when it ended, it was like, we missed the piano bar. We wish we could have it again, but there hasn't been an organic circumstance like that. And it actually ended a few months after Mainstay Monday started, so I had my hands full with that. But then people will come to Mainstay Monday, we like this, but it's not that. Can we have both? I'm dying here. No. But when I started what now is Piano for My Friends, the piano bar was the model. And when I started on the Mainstay page, because a lot of those people are the same people who follow the Mainstay, some of the early comments were, piano bar's back. And that's what I was going for. That's how I modeled it. And I think, what did I call it at first? To do it, the DIY cocktail hour, right? Then it became when I put it on my page, DIY was on the Mainstay Facebook page. Now it's Piano for My Friends. Escape from Home was first here, until we were allowed to leave home, and then we didn't need to escape. Well, we do need to escape, but you know what I mean. And that kind of lives on here. But I'm getting ahead of myself now. We'll talk about that another time. The last thing I'll say is that I wasn't running away from the Great American Songbook and the older tunes, whatsoever, because there's always a place for them. But I just knew that that couldn't be everything. And so I'm always looking for, some things that will engage everybody. And as long as you kind of, hand somebody something, then they're willing to take a look at what else you're giving them, and then kind of evaluate it without without the same sort of judgment or like, why is he not playing what I like? If that didn't make sense, or maybe it did. And of course, that's a circumstance I always navigate, so I'm kind of comfortable with that, or kind of ish, what to do. But, those Great American Songbook tunes were certainly there, so let me play one. That sounds like one I already played. That's not what I was going to play. I don't know what I want to play. So there it is, my little tiny world and my little experiences in it. And thank you, Dave McKenna, for the inspiration. See you perhaps tomorrow night for Piano for My Friends, and again on Wednesday night. And keep in touch. Cool things are happening. Hope to see you soon.